All right, today we're going to look at the basics for how you learn how to do mole to particle conversion and maybe some mole to gram conversion, mole to mass conversion. Um, these are the very basics, the very intro to how you do it, and especially if you were not in class today when we learn this, or you just need to go back over it because it's foundational. It's a great idea. So we're going to start by playing what I call monkey in the middle, except instead of playing monkey in the middle, we're going to play mole in the middle. So on the center of your paper, you're going to write the word mole. And the mole is always going to have to stay in the middle of, over here, we're going to have the mass. And over here, we're going to have the particles. Okay, so the mole has got to stay in the middle of the particles, which are over here, and the mass, which is over here. Now, particles are like chemical particles. So what you would think of when you think of chemistry, most likely, which would be sometimes a problem might call it particles. Sometimes it might call it ions. So it might say how many ions are in one mole. It might say molecules. It might say atoms. And we'll probably come across some other things that they might call it in that regard as well. Okay, mole is pretty much always just called mole. Okay, then on the other side of that, you have mass, and mass is what I showed you guys in lab the other day, where we actually measured out the grams in 1 mole of sodium chloride on a scale. So that's when we actually use a scale. Okay. Now, in order to play the mole in the middle or the monkey in the middle, you have to pass, instead of the regular monkey in the middle game, you actually have to pass to the mole in the middle. You cannot pass from mass over to particles. So you can go from here to here. You can go from mass to moles, and you can go from moles to mass. You can also go from mole to particle, or from one type of these particles back to a mole. What you cannot do is this right here. You cannot go from this part, from a particle over to mass. You cannot do that. So there's a few important things that you guys have to know. First of all, whenever we're looking at mass, this is going to be recorded in grams. Moles is abbreviated by putting MOL. And for these over here, you're going to have to write out the word. Either write out particles, write out ions, write out molecules, write out the word atoms. And you're also always going to have an element with it. Like, for example, we might be looking at sodium chloride. So you might have grams of NaCl. You might have grams of gold. So you might have grams of AU. Okay, so that's how we're going to look at that pretty much every time. Now, there's a few things that you also are going to have to remember, and this will all start to make sense. On this side, you're going to use the conversion factor of 1 mole equals however many grams. And to find out how many, you're going to use the periodic table of elements to find the molar mass, which we found the other day. Okay. On this side over here, you're going to have to use the conversion factor of 1 mole equals 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles. Okay, so you're going to have to figure out what goes where based on these conversion factors. So if you're going from mole to particles, you would say 1 mole of whatever it is, like for example, 1 mole of gold is equal to 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles, or ions, or molecules, or atoms. Okay. The other very simple thing that I'm going to have you guys use every single time that you're in class is the T-chart. And it might be a little different than some people do it, but in here you're going to need to identify whatever you have. That's whatever the problem gave you. Whatever you have, you're going to also put those units into the trash. Then the other thing that you want to do is, once you figure out what goes in what you have and what goes in the trash, so that we can kind of cross those out later, you're going to have over here what you want. This is what you don't have yet. For example, if they're asking you how many grams are in a certain amount of moles, what we don't know is the grams. They're asking us the grams. So that's where we put what we want. Okay. And then we'll go from there and solve it. Okay. And in every single one of these, you're going to need to put your value with your unit, which might be moles, it might be grams, and you're going to put your element or your substance element like gold, substance like NaCl or C6H12O6, something along those lines. Okay, so this is how we're going to work this out. The very first problem that we're going to work on today is right here, and we're going to use that system that we just set up. Calculate the number of particles, so atoms, molecules, ions for each. The first one we're going to look at is 2.15 moles of gold, which is Au. If they're giving you a number, this is what you have. So this is our have. And what we want is the number of particles. This is what we don't have. Actually, sorry, let me switch colors on that right there so that'll make it easier for you guys to understand. This is what we want. Okay, so this is what we have, and then we're going to calculate what we want from there. Okay, we're going to go back and we're going to set up our T-chart right here. And we're going from particles, which you see particles are here, and we're going to convert it into moles. Sorry, we're going to go from moles. We have moles, 2.15 moles, and we're going to convert it into particles. Okay, and we're going to use this conversion factor of 1 mole equals this many particles. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our T-chart. You're going to need to get in the habit of making your T-charts pretty big because sometimes you have a lot of stuff to write there. And if you remember from our chart here, you have, trash, and want. So what we have, I'll just set it up on here for you. What we have, what we're given, we have 2.15 moles of gold. So I'm going to write down 2.15 MOL, which is the abbreviation for moles, of gold, which is Au. Okay. Now, if I have that, I also have to put that in the trash. But I don't want to put the number in the trash. I just want to put my unit and my element in the trash. So I'm down here, I'm going to put moles of Au. And what that's going to do is let me cancel those two guys out so that I can get rid of it. Now I need to figure out what I want. And they want me to find the number of particles. So up here in the want category, I'm going to put particles of gold. Same substance, still gold. That's what we're looking for. The question now is, how do I figure out what numbers I put here? And the answer is, I'm going to go back up here to my chart and I'm going to go, okay, well, if I forget about all this, how many moles are in one particle? So, or how many particles are in 1 mole? You can look at it however you want. But the short answer would be there are 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles. You just match it up. This number goes here, 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. And there's 1 mole. So I'm going to put 1 mole right there. Okay, and you don't have to worry about any other numbers that you don't know yet because this number is going to help you out. And now to figure out this information, you're going to look at this just like you do any other chart in your math class. And you're going to go, okay, if they're side by side, we multiply things that are side by side. If they're top and bottom, like a fraction, you divide. Okay, so side by side, we're going to multiply this. And on these calculators that you guys get to use in school, you're going to need to use parentheses. So it's going to be 2.15 times, start your parentheses for Avogadro's number, so 6.02 times 10, use your little caret, to the 23rd, hit the over arrow because you don't want to have the parentheses on the exponent, close your parentheses, and then hit enter. And my answer is going to be, and I'm going to use the same number that I had 6.02. There's 2 decimals. It means 2 decimals here. It's going to be 1.29 times 10 to the 24th power. So my answer is 1.29 times 10 to the 24th particles of Au. And that's how you figure out you got rid of moles of Au and you kept particles of Au. And that's your answer.